everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, our TOM Storytelling Hour. This is TOM, Treasure Our Moments Through Storytelling. This is Misako, and my co-host, Tim Barnaby. He's going to put the wrap up at the end. And our MC is Oscar Romero, and I am going to let him lead the meeting.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our TOM Storytellers Lab Storytelling Hour. We have a great lineup today. I'm going to start with our first speaker, that is Geri Maroney. Geri Maroney is an award-winning author, also a keynote speaker. In her book, Beautiful Lady, Geri shares her real-life story of how cancer changed her life for the better through reawakening and rebirth. She is a source of motivation and offers a mix of humor and thoughtfulness to help cancer warriors navigate the scary path ahead of them. And her story is entitled Cancer's Gift of Rebirth and Reawakening. Cancer's Gift of Rebirth and Reawakening. Geri Maroney, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Oscar and Misako and Tim, for the opportunity to speak today. I really love that you are supporting the Storytellers platform, because I think that there's so many things that we can learn from one another through storytelling. So thank you very much for the opportunity. As Oscar said, my name is Geri Maroney, and I'm a cancer survivor. The title of my speech today is Cancer's Gifts of Rebirth and Reawakening. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I felt like there were lessons that I might need to learn during that burden. I decided early on to sort of stay open and let myself hear those lessons. I just didn't know there'd be so many. I learned really hard lessons about control, trust, forgiveness, and self-determination. We all know that cancer sucks. There are a lot of really crappy things about cancer. But what I hated the most was the cruel and extreme way that cancer ripped away my identity. One day I was fine, healthy, successful, working hard, skipping through my life, well, on some days. And the next day I was thrown into a very dark storm that would take me a long time to recover from. My slogan for today's talk is big and brave. And those three words would be my mantra throughout my journey, and I leaned on those words often. After many months of receiving the diagnosis, going through blood tests, doctor's tests, family discussions, and self-reflection, I had finally reached surgery day. In some ways, I was excited to be at this point, but in others, I was absolutely terrified. My surgery would be a 14-hour surgery that required a team of 3 doctors. 1 would remove the cancer, and 2 would rebuild my body. I was more afraid to be under anesthesia for 14 hours than I was the actual removal of the surgery. But I was ready to go, and we had reached the big day. I'd arrived at the hospital at 5 a.m., according to my pre-surgery instructions. I was checked in, had gone through the process, changed into my lovely blue robe and my white skid-proof socks, and I was waiting for my turn, laying in the bed, waiting to go. When suddenly, the power went out. Like, I kid you not, the entire floor of the hospital went dark. This terrified me. I thought it was God telling me, no, don't do it. This is a bad idea. You shouldn't go through with this surgery. Something bad is going to happen. But of course, I couldn't stop. We had to move forward. If I could have gotten out of that bed and to my car in the parking lot without someone chasing me, you can bet I would have tried. But we were ready to go. Within a few minutes, the power came back on. And my surgeon stuck his head in my little waiting area from around the curtain and said, everything's great. We're fine now. We're 15 minutes away from surgery. That terrified me even more, like sent me into an absolute panic attack. I was still recovering from the fact that the lights just went out. And now I needed to gather my strength. So I closed my eyes and really tried to shut everything out. I focused on a story of when my girls were little. They would come home from school and be crying about something, that someone was mean to them, or they didn't make the sports team, or they did bad on a test, or whatever it was. And I would always tell them they needed to be big and brave, that they had more strength and courage in their heart than they thought they did, and that they could get through this if they just were big and brave. That was the lesson that washed over me while I sat in my bed. I had to be big and brave. Now it was my lesson. No one on earth could take this burden from me. I was 15 minutes away, and I had to get myself through this. I didn't want to go under anesthesia, terrified. So I promised to be big and brave. 14 hours later, I woke up in ICU. The surgery had gone well, and I would spend 4 days in ICU and then 2 additional days in a regular room. And then I was released to go home. I'd never been so happy to go home. I had 4 drains in my body and a bag full of pain meds, but I was ready to go home and happy to be getting this next step of healing. Fast forward about 6 weeks, and all of a sudden I had fear, anger, sadness, and dread, like overwhelming. My doctor had told me that this might happen sometime after surgery, and I had seen him a few appointments before this, and he kept asking me questions like, was I sad? Was I mad? Did I want to hurt myself? Did I want to hurt someone else? And I thought, but no, that's silly. I'm trying to heal from cancer. I just know that's silly. Well, it wasn't silly. That day, I knew what he was talking about. It was PTSD. And it hit me hard. I honestly didn't think I had the emotional strength to fight this new monster. I had just spent all my energy fighting cancer. And now I had to fight a new monster. But a friend of mine gave me some excellent advice. She told me that PTSD wasn't a monster. It was just a shadow. This was just one more step in my race to warrior status. And she was right. Her words gave me the incentive to go on. I was a warrior, and I deserved to finish the race with warrior status. I didn't just survive a 14-hour surgery to have PTSD knock me down. So I slowed down. I gave myself more time to heal, more time to manage the emotional issues. Cancer is very much a physical and emotional journey. I would some days take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, but that was okay. At least I was making progress. And I tried really hard to get my life back to normal. So some time had passed, and I needed to take a business trip. So I woke up that morning, and I was sort of annoyed that I even had to do it, but I told myself, be positive and stay open to what the world might bring you today. So I got on my way, went to the airport, and started my trip. And when I travel, I don't really pay a lot of attention to those around me. I'm not really talky. I just kind of want to get it done. So I'd gotten to the airport, cleared security, went down the escalator, and was waiting for the train to take us to the terminals. When I see this lady off to my right, this older lady, and I see her kind of weaving through and pushing her way through the other people that are standing there until she gets right next to me. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe she thinks I'm someone else, that she knows me. So the train comes, the doors open, and I go to the back of the last car, which is where I always go, and I stand there, and she followed me, like almost shoulder to shoulder. And I'm like, I remember thinking, roll back, honey. There's a lot of room on the train. You don't have to stand right next to me. But she did, and I wasn't making eye contact. So a few moments passed, and then suddenly she spoke. And she asked me how my day was going. And I said, it was going great. How about hers? And she was so excited. She told me the story that she was on her way to see her daughter, who she hadn't spoken to in years because anger had broke their relationship. Over time, something had happened and they hadn't spoken in years. And then suddenly the daughter called her out of the blue and invited her to attend this very special celebration. She was so excited. Then she leaned over, touched my arm and said, don't let anger build up in your life. Don't let it take the joy from you. Forgive others and forgive yourself. She was excited. I was stunned. I had tears in my eyes, and I thought back to the words that I had said to myself earlier in the morning about being open to what might happen. The train arrived to the terminal, and I had to get off. She was staying on. So I got off the train and then looked back at her after I was sort of headed towards the escalator, and I could see her like there was a spotlight on her. She was smiling and waving at me like we had been lifelong friends. I waved back to her and turned, wiped my tears, and started my journey. That was so cool. I thought about that stranger all day, and I still think about her now, 5 years later. I didn't know her name, but I can see her face and I can hear her words. Don't let anger build up. Don't let it take joy from your life. Forgive yourself and forgive others. What a beautiful gift that was. It still gives me goosebumps. It was such an important lesson for me to learn that day. I had let anger consume me, and this beautiful stranger found a way to bring me back to center. I was thankful she was my angel. These are 2 examples of the gifts that cancer gave me. I share many more of my stories in my book titled Beautiful Lady, as I work to provide support and encouragement to my fellow pink sisters fighting their own cancer battle. No one should fight that battle alone. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that I've inspired you to be big and brave and to keep your eyes open for the angels around us. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really an amazing story. I love the kind of double message and that unexpected gift of meeting that stranger. Really wonderful. I can say cancer has affected my family as well. Some survived, some have not. So it's amazing the idea of being big and brave. Absolutely critical. Very good. Well, our next speaker is Stevie Howe. Stevie Howe wants to talk with you. Running a marketing and digital communication firm, Howe Innovative Design, in 3 states for 10 years. He's heard many stories and told a few. In a moment of historic difficulty, our narrative unites our humanity with our purpose. Join Stevie for his story. Let's talk. Stevie Howe, let's talk.
Hey guys, so let's start with what brought me here today. Masako Ioke, the grand communicator that has united me with this cause. I decided to sell my house in Salt Lake City in 2013, and my lovely wife and I, we packed what we could fit, as well as 2 angry cats and a giant house plant, and moved to Olympia, Washington. When we would meet people in Olympia, Washington, their response would be, "Why?" That was alarming, I'm not gonna lie, ultimately resulting in us moving to Portland, moving our business with them, and then back to Utah, where I'm originally from. So I'm coming to you from my office in Salt Lake City, Utah. I run a strategic communication and digital marketing firm, but get this, I may have lost my mind. I started a production company. I've been producing films and videos that are of commercial and marketing type videos, and it's excruciating. Can I just say, it's just terrible. So I have opted to go. I started making connections at the Sundance Institute and workshopping a script. And why not, right? The whole world has turned itself upside down. Why not just go with it? I'm just going to lean into it. We're going to do that. So I was offered this opportunity and I just say yes. It's the slog to yes, right? I mean, why not? So I thought about telling you guys some profound life-altering stories, and I got a few. But I really love my HIPAA medical privacy, so I'm going to tell you about how I became a mall security guard in Salt Lake City, Utah, and all of the things that went totally wrong with that decision to make $7.20 an hour and risk my life based on youthful exuberance, the delusion of a meritocracy, and a totally misplaced sense of social justice. That sound about right? Okay. Let's get right into it. So I was basically homeless. I had been an auto mechanic because my parents were like, get a trade or go to college. Well, I'm a high school dropout, which, check out those awards, right? You never know that. I'm a high school dropout in the whole subversive, non-conforming kind of way. In Utah, I'm basically a cultural refugee. Take what you would like. But culturally, religiously, it's just me here. Okay, just me. And my lovely wife and 2 cats. So I blew out my back. Auto mechanics is very brutal, and I'm 5 feet, we'll say 6. I mean, let's say that. Let's go with that. And relatively small framed, but muscular. So I had a bit of an inferiority complex, right? I had something to prove, and all the guys in the shop were like, "You're gonna hurt yourself." I didn't believe them. No, of course not. I'm 18. I'm invincible. So I needed a new career within like a year and a half. So my friend, I used to hang out at this coffee shop called Beans and Brews downtown. We joke and call it As the Bean Turns because, drama, theatrics. He says to me, I'm like, okay, look, I'm functionally unemployed. I'm sleeping in a closet of a coffee shop, okay? This is not how I intended life to go for me. And, someone took mercy on my soul and said, okay, go get this job as a mall security guard. Crossroads Plaza, that's what this is called. It's now a totally different mall. Totally different thing. But at the time, it was built on old Korea and Japantown when the railroads merged from the west and from the east. They did so in northern Utah. And all of those Asian Americans that built our railroads, they cut them loose. They joined the railroads. They all celebrated. They had champagne. Don't tell the Mormons. And they loved it, right? They gave them their checks and were like, good luck, guys. So in Salt Lake City and Ogden, Utah, there were these Asian American communities, and that they've leveled those to build a mall because this is Utah. We don't value people of color or their communities. We want malls. So, and it's named Crossroads of the West because Utah is a crossroads. Well, what ends up happening, and I had no idea, is that people go to the mall to commit major crimes. I don't understand why you do that. I mean, I go to buy like shoes, I'm not really looking to commit grand larceny, but hey, it happens. And so I put on this uniform as this nonconformist gutter punk teenager, right? Who had previously been a homeless teenager. Again, cultural refugee, just saying that, bit of a malcontent. So I used to wear this pig t-shirt underneath it with this big smiling pig. That was like my subversion at the time, to have a healthy attitude of contempt. And I worked with these guys that had the most raging inferiority complexes. I mean, it was just, it was like a masterclass in toxic masculinity working for mall security. Like, you guys know you don't have any actual power, right? You make $7 an hour. Just bring it down a notch. You just got to calm down. So I'm training with one of the few men I've met named Kim, who is a tall, gentle, kind man. And then the second day, I'm training with this guy, Russ, who went on to be a Salt Lake City Police Department officer. And we're in a Suzuki Sidekick with big flashing yellow lights on the top of it. Very official, very formal. Nothing says authority like a Suzuki Sidekick with yellow lights on it. And we're going down through the parking structure, and this is my second day on the job as an unarmed security guard. No gun. Thank God. Do not give a 19-year-old with an inferiority complex a gun, please. Please, America. So right, just don't do it. So we're coming down this parking structure, and we hear this shouting. And I look over, and I see a guy who earlier in the day had been hanging out around the security office, which is on the second floor. He has a gun, and he's screaming at us to back up. And I'm stunned, and this guy, Russ, right, he does what any sane person would do. He puts it in reverse, and he backs up, and the guy's screaming. The guy turns and goes running into the mall with a gun, and I'm a 19-year-old idiot with poor training. I'm like, great. So I go running after the guy. By the way, not an appropriate response for an unarmed security officer, just for the record, making $7.20 an hour. I go running after this guy, and we have patch radio. So I'm in the radio, like, somebody call 911, call the police, get the police here. This guy is in the mall. He disappears. I have no idea where this guy is. So I come running back out to the parking structure. It was a young woman who was working in the salon right by the security office. He was attempting to kidnap her at gunpoint. She had opened her car door. He had followed her out to the parking lot, and he had obstructed her ability to get out of the car and was holding her at gunpoint. And we just happened to, there was an even and an odd level. And if Russ had made the decision to go down the other way, it would have gone a very, very different direction. But he didn't. So Russ, I don't know if he's a coward or if he's wise, probably both. He backs up and he goes, he got as far away from that gun as humanly possible and went to an office and stuff to call the police. They broadcast, there's loss prevention, what's called loss prevention. Those are the people that prevent theft in some of the larger retail stores that are anchors, the large retailers in the malls. He had footage of this guy looking right into a camera. So the police department and the civil authorities in Salt Lake broadcast this all over the news, and the guy's landlady called in an information line and reported that this was her tenant. So 2 days later, he went into a stairwell in what at the time was the Salt Lake Downtown Library and committed suicide, rather violently and publicly, I might add. And this taught me several things about my personality. One, I will always run after danger. Okay, this was an important life lesson. This not well advised. I will always do that. And don't do that, by the way. Just don't do that. The other thing is I had to disabuse myself of these youthful notions of meritocracy, that I would work hard and that I would be promoted and that you could start with a noble No, that is not at all how the world works, it turns out. Older me completely understands this. This was in the late 90s, by the way. It also taught me something about the precariousness of timing. That you don't know if he would have turned that wheel one way instead of the other, which direction it would have gone in. I also learned that excessively friendly, inappropriate people probably have an alternative agenda. Because this guy had been hanging out around the security office and he had been making... It was odd. It was very odd, making lots of extensive conversation. That was my second day on the job. I was completely hooked. I loved working security at that point. There was no way I was going to not do that job. I went on to go to college and graduate with honors, and that's what all this stuff behind me is about. And pursue a completely different career. Obviously, it's the exposition, went through that. But at those moments of the precipice between youth and adulthood, where I sought novelty, I sought adventure, and I had this noble idea of the value of hard work and patrolling. My physique was fantastic, by the way. Just walk all day long. It's a great career for cardiovascular fitness. I learned the value of it. And I'm glad that I was offered the opportunity to tell you the story of my incredibly bad youthful judgment and my brush with adventure and possibly death in retrospect. So thank you for offering me this opportunity to share that with you.
Thank you very much, Stevie. That was quite a story, and it reminds me of crazy things I've seen and all the decisions I make to, I don't know, change careers. And it's funny. Yesterday, while knocking at a dog, being a dog person, having grown up with dogs, I never thought that usually when you stick your hand out to have a dog sniff you, usually that's a good thing, but not always a good thing. Oh! So, that was more like a time waster. I have to go to the doctor while I'm supposed to be knocking on doors, anyway. But I guess I ran towards danger. What can I say? So we're going to take a little 3-minute break, chance to collect ourselves and do what we need to do. And then we'll be back with 2 more speakers. So don't go away. Okay. Well, and we're back. We have our next speaker, Crystal Waltman. Crystal has achieved a collegiate national championship in softball, and she's continued to coach nutrition and fitness for over 20 years, but has found her calling in the spiritual fitness. In her book, Quitting to Win, Crystal shares her raw story of tragedy and triumph, along with her discoveries. It's a powerful process to acknowledge the past, find joy in the present, and welcome a new future. Today, she has a passion for helping others achieve more success in their lives. Please welcome Crystal Waltman, Quitting to Win. Crystal Waltman, Quitting to Win.
Well, thanks, Tom, for having me. It's a real honor to be here, and thanks for your story, Stevie, and great share, Geri. Okay, I'd like to start with something funny. So there's this little girl. She's got on her cap and her ball and her bat, and she's walking through her backyard, and she stops, pauses, and she says, "I'm the greatest hitter in the world." She adjusts her cap. She throws the ball up into the air, and she swings. "Strike one," she says. Undaunted, she picks up her ball. She adjusts her hat again. She throws the ball up into the air. "Strike two," she says to herself as she walks through the backyard a little bit more. She throws up the ball again. "Strike three," she says. "I'm the greatest pitcher in the world." So we all start off with feeling like that as we are little girls. But the night that my best friend Scarlett committed suicide was the night that I realized human beings' greatest emotion was to mask their feelings. I was with her the night that she died. After cocaine burned our noses and alcohol flooded our veins, she left to go see an old boyfriend. Hours later, her house was surrounded by police cars and yellow tape. Scarlett was a high achiever and a collegiate athlete, and that night I did not see coming, nobody did. But as I learned by the cruelty of destiny that a screw cannot be taken out of the wall by using a hammer, that depression cannot be taken out of the heart by using alcohol, and that pain cannot be taken out of the soul by using drugs. Instead, alcohol will kill you. Drugs will destroy you until you progressively destroy yourself. We live in a society that offers us pills to kill our body aches, drinks to mend our sorrows, and drugs to escape our ghost. But we must fight back with courage and love, but mostly a methodical change in our lifestyle. Quitting to Win is a proven plan to let go of bad habits, learn to feel, and love yourself. It's a book about regaining what mental illness and disease has taken away from us. We can recover. We do recover. Don't give up. Join the movement and the message of hope, Quitting to Win. I first started drinking at the age of 14 when I was made the varsity softball team, and I was put up with 18-year-olds. So immediately I was put with the 18-year-old and business as usual. We won state that year. I was a starter. I played every game. And that was my first blackout. After we won state, there was drinks being passed in red Solo cups, Biggie Smalls, Tupac playing, marijuana and cigarettes circulating through the air. And I grew up knowing no different. You play hard, you train hard, and you drink hard. Alcohol became a sport for us, just like training our sport. Many years later, I will have so many blank spaces in my life that it was until the movie Girl on the Train came out, where she witnessed a murder and she was in a blackout state and she didn't know if she really saw the murder or not. I realized that I was living careless and carefree lifestyle, and I couldn't picture myself past 40. And after having a daughter, and taking off a minute to breastfeed, a couple years to breastfeed, my body never metabolized alcohol the same. And as a mother, being a drunk mother is just not a good look. I had to surrender and fall to my knees and ask for help. And my disease wants me to be alone. My disease wants to isolate me, and it wants me to think that there is no hope and that I'm going through this alone. And I am not going through this alone. There is help out there for all those who still suffer with alcoholism and addiction. There's help for those loved ones who love the addict. If you're not the addict, addiction and alcoholism is now the #3 killer of the United States by lifestyle choice disease. The #1 used to be tobacco, and now it's obesity caused by sugary drinks. Tobacco went to #2, and now alcoholism is in #3. It's a lifestyle choice disease that you can get help from, and you can recover, and we do recover. As a mother, I surrendered and fell to my knees. Thank God I never killed anybody. But drinking and driving with kids was my bottom when I had to ask for help because I started hiding it. It was very socially acceptable. My life from the outside was very well put together. I had a lot of help around me. So it didn't look, I didn't think that I was an alcoholic still, because my idea of an alcoholic was that person on the street with the brown bag. Thoughts of suicide came in because I couldn't figure out how to stop. I tried to stop. I was in this emotional insanity. Every week I would say, okay, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do that again. And then Monday I would stop. I'd stay in bed with depression and shame. Tuesday, I'd feel a little bit better. Maybe I'd turn the TV on and eat something. Wednesday, I'd take a shower. And Thursday, I'd get up and go to the gym and put my makeup on. And Thursday, happy hour would start it all over again. And I was on this vicious cycle. And I just did not know how to get out of it until I asked for help. So there is help out there for anybody who still suffers from alcoholism, addiction, thoughts of suicide, depression, anxiety. Mental illness affects us all, and we can recover. The antidote for anxiety is gratefulness and thanksgiving. Anxiety, you're staying and you're worrying about things that haven't happened yet. And when you stay and when you focus on things that are true, that you can be grateful for, that can help get you out of it. So the book, Quitting to Win, A Proven Plan to Let Go of Bad Habits, Learn to Feel, and Love Yourself, is about the tips and tricks that I have learned and applied to myself. We are not healed. And I've learned that by relapse after relapse after relapse. 3 relapses it took me to figure out I am an alcoholic. I will always be an alcoholic. And I'm now a grateful alcoholic, to where I can carry the message of hope to all those who still suffer. So this is a disease, something that you have, and you can break the cycle in your family. Everybody might have a cancer gene, or you might have an alcoholic gene. You might have a disease gene, but you can make the change by your environment and your thoughts and your faith and your foundation that you create around you. Acknowledging what you have is the first step, and then taking those daily reprieves is how you can break the cycle. So I talk in this book, I share my stories of tragedy over triumph and how I get through it on a daily basis. And it is not something that you recover from. It's something that you have every day, and every day you got to make the choices. And there's just today I can say, okay, today I'm not going to drink, and that's all I know. And so far it's been a long stretch, and writing this book was a form of outing myself and carrying the message and recovering out loud. Thank you.
Crystal, thanks for your courage and honesty to tell your story. That's big and brave, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Oscar.
All right. And our last but not least, our final speaker for today is Gail Lovelace Menasco. Gail is a producer of Experiences You Should Have, an adventurous podcast, and she's also a TEDx speaker. She's been a skydiver of 7 years, also an avid scuba diver. She experienced life above, below, and on this mortal coil. She also enjoys myriad forms of dance, public speaking, storytelling, and cooking. Her kitchen is considered one of the world's kitchen as her family is exposed to new cuisines. So please welcome Gail with her story, Smoothies and Sharks. Smoothies and Sharks.
Thank you very much. I am so excited to be here and just truly thank you for this opportunity. So by day, I'm an SEO and digital marketing, but by night and weekends and whenever I can steal away, I'm an adventurer with a travel and adventure podcast. And 2020 is a weird year for a travel podcast, let me tell you. But we get creative on the show. So I've got a story for you today called Smoothies and Sharks. So let's begin. I was 17 years old, sitting on a boat in the middle of the ocean with men I barely knew in shark-infested waters, thinking maybe this is why my mother was concerned. Now, I'm going to take you back to 6 months prior. I was living in Tennessee, and I was at the lowest of my lows. My parents and I had been in many court dates over multiple years with a very contentious divorce. Just a lot of crap was going on. I was in and out of multiple schools, and one day I decided just to take a bottle of Advil and just be done with it. And that put me into the Vanderbilt Psychiatric Hospital, and that was an interesting change. And one day I was allowed to go to the hospital part-time, and I could drive myself. The state of Tennessee ended up getting me a hardship license too during this period. And I was driving the 45-minute drive back to my home, and I saw this Smoothie King in Nashville, and I decided, okay, I'll just stop in. And I was still just feeling just so low, like there's just no purpose, life sucks. And I walked into the Smoothie King, and all the employees were wearing these Hawaiian shirts, and they say, "Aloha, welcome to Smoothie King." And I'm like, whoa, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say aloha before. This is so cool. So I order a Caribbean way, and I'm like watching these workers, and they're like pouring the strawberries and doing the bananas, and they got like a little jazz in their step, and they're smiling, and they got like high ponytails. And I'm like, this is what happiness looks like. I found it. Like, happiness is at Smoothie King. And I'm like, okay, I need to learn how to become happy. So clearly I need to work at Smoothie King. And so I paid for my smoothie and asked for an application, and I filled it out. I didn't care, like it was almost an hour away from where I lived. I just found the youth of happiness. So I got this job at Smoothie King. I mean, it's like $6 an hour or something. And I probably spent more in gas than what I earned there. But I like learned the smoothie happiness way. You know, I got that pep in the step. I would peel bananas to tropical music, and I started saying aloha to people, and I wore the Hawaiian shirt with pride. And one day the owner of Smoothie King came to me, and he knew I had been in like a weird situation for quite some time. And my family didn't have any money. It was all taken away in all these like court dates. And I'm really trying to do my part for the family too. And he looked at me and he's just like, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm thinking, well, I'm breaking the Smoothie King, you know, but But I thought about it, and I went to like that happy place in my head. I went to that place like when I was like 5 and 6 and 7 to like what I thought happiness would be. And I looked at him and I said, John, I want to be on the bottom of the ocean surrounded by sharks. And he's like, okay, all right. I can take that. I can dig it, And so I kept on doing my work, and I wanted to pick up more hours after school, weekends. I needed to work. I needed some money. And I asked him for more hours, and he said he would give them to me. And he said if I could do all these hours and make straight A's in school, he would do something really cool for me. So I'm like, cool. So I went to class, got my grades up, started making straight A's. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what is it going to be? Is it going to be a Starbucks gift card? Is it going to be, movie tickets? Is it going to be a $20 bonus? I mean, I don't know. So I ended up doing it. I gave him my straight A's. I'm freaking excited. He pats me on the back and doesn't mention anything. So each week I'm like checking my folder to see like what is like, do I have like a $20 bonus in here? Is, where's the Starbucks gift card? Like, what is this special thing going to be? And like weeks went by, and one night while I was driving home, he called me, and he never called me. And so I picked up, I know while driving, don't do that. And so I'm talking to him, and he said, Gail, I need to speak to your mother. And I'm like, oh no. He overheard that I snuck out the other night. He's going to tell her everything. Don't talk to my mom, whatever you do. And I'm like, oh, John, whatever you need to tell my mother, you can just tell it straight to me. I promise I will tell her every word. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, wow, he's okay, cool. And he said, Gail, I want to get you scuba certified. You worked hard. I know you want to be with the sharks. Thing is, you can't do it during working hours. So I've set you up with a private instructor starting at 10 o'clock at night in Nashville. So you can get your certification. I'm like, hell yeah! Yes, I'm so in. My mother will be fine with it. Don't worry. And so I started these diving lessons. And before I knew it, I had this open water certification, and I was hanging out at the dive shop one day, and I saw this orange flyer with like sharks all over it. And it was written in like scary letters, and it said like swim with the sand tiger sharks in the graveyard of the Atlantic. Called that because there's like all these like shipwrecks there, and there's German U-boat, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going on this trip. And it said I need to be advanced and nitrox certified. And I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go get that. And so I called up the same scuba instructor. I start doing these extra lessons, paying him with every single Smoothie King dollar I've ever earned. And I just didn't want to ask anything of my mom already. Like, we just did not have cash for this. And each week I would go to the dive shop and I would give them $10 here, $20 there. I went to the bank and got a debit card with the Visa logo on it. And I called the airline, and I ended up buying tickets to go to North Carolina to go swim with these sharks. And then I found the other men that had signed up for this trip, and they're all like middle-aged men. And I'm this like teenager, and I just turned 17, and I'm now, trying to figure this out. So I ended up paying for the trip, got these extra certifications. I figured I'd, figure it out. I never dove in an ocean before. I just did rock quarry dives in Tennessee, but it'd be all right. And then I couldn't afford a hotel, nor could I book a hotel. So I asked the men if I could sleep like at their hotel, and they're like, yeah, it's fine, and rented a car with them. And I just was so afraid to tell my mom. I didn't want her to say no. So I wanted to book everything, pay for everything. But I just still couldn't tell her. But it was a week before I was leaving. And I'm like, I need to let her know I'm leaving town. And so she came home from work. And as she walked in, I'm like, hey, I got to show you something. And I like laid out all these diving certifications and the trip itinerary and where I was going, and she flipped out. She drove straight down to the dive shop. She sat the owner down and she like reamed him out for letting me sign up for this trip without her permission. And then she looked him in the eye and she said, "Do you promise to treat her like your own daughter?" And he said, "I promise." And she came home and said, "I could go." So before I knew it, I was on an airplane. I flew to North Carolina. I landed. I'm surrounded by these middle-aged men. And then they cracked open some beers. They handed it to me and they said, "You're one of the guys." And I'm like, cool, great. Don't treat me like your daughter. Like I'm one of you now. And before I knew it, I was out on this boat multiple hours away from the coast, and I got to do my first dive. We went down to 120 feet, and I'm at the base of the shipwreck, and I am now on the ocean floor surrounded by sharks. And it was the most exciting moment. I'm like, this! I mean, I thought smoothies were happiness, but like sitting on the bottom of the ocean surrounded by sharks, now this is happiness. And I'm freaking out and I'm laughing and I'm like, got a regulator in. So it's like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm freaking out underwater because I'm so excited. But I was running through my air like no other. And I'm like, okay, I should probably like head back to the rope, And so you have to go up really slowly. You can't just like shoot to the surface, and you've got to do these safety stops. You've got to get the nitrogen bubbles out of your system. And while I'm doing my safety stops on this line, I'm taking these breaths in, and then I couldn't take another breath. Like I ran out of air. And that's bad, like that's like not what you want to do underwater. And so I looked down and I saw some of the men below me, and I was able to pull myself on the rope down, and I'm like trying to hit them underwater, which is a hard thing to do. And then they turned around and I'm like, "I'm out of air. I need to buddy breathe." And they're like, "Really?" Like, I'm like, "Yeah." So I took my regulator out. They put their spare regulator in me. And we came up to the surface together very slowly and got on the boat. And there, feeling the sun on my face and tasting the salt, I realized that I had found happiness in shark-infested waters with men that were now my friends.
Thanks, Gail. That's phenomenal. Love your wit and humor. And I did some scuba diving with my dad when I was in my teens, and I was about 80 something feet down. But I don't think I would have used the word excited if I'd been surrounded by sharks. I might have used a different word, but anyway, really, really fascinating. Thank you all. I think we have a little bit of time. I am supposed to now do a quick set of interviews. So I'll tell you what I'll be asking now. So 3 words to describe yourself. Whoa, 3 words to describe yourself. Let's start with our first speaker, Geri.
3 words. Adventurous, stubborn, thoughtful.
Okay. Okay. All right, how about Stevie? Your turn. 3 words.
Loving, bold, maybe a little reckless.
All right, Crystal, you're up next. You're on mute.
Hi. Thanks, Oscar. 3 words to describe myself. Spiritually connected and emotionally sober.
One more.
Okay, thank you. All right, Gail.
Am I unmuted? Yes. Adventurous, goal-oriented, and analytical.
Ooh.
All right. I had a couple more questions that I can ask, but just in the interest of time, I want to just give everybody the opportunity to state if they have anything upcoming, like events and things like that. I know Crystal does. So Crystal, you want to jump in first?
Yeah, thanks, Oscar. I'd like to invite everybody to my book launch for Quitting to Win. It's going to be really great. I'm going to have an MC and 4 guests. We're going to have lots of giveaways. There might even be a 30-day treatment giveaway, a 28-day treatment giveaway. There's going to be several books, several ebooks, all different genres of some of my author friends back here. So anyways, I hope you can tune in October 17th, and that's 2 to 3:15 Arizona time, which is PST. So thanks, Oscar.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah. I just recorded my first podcast for, this is going to be a dirty word. I don't know if you want to bleep this. It's fuck marketing. Sorry, guys. Trust me, it's appropriate. I use the moniker Lies We Believe. So it's going to be released on, listen to this podcast.com next Friday. So come on along. Yes, find out some misadventures and tales of caution and helpful, useful tips about marketing from someone who knows enough to be contemptuous of the thing they love.
Anybody else have something?
I do. So every other week is a new podcast episode of experiences you should have. So please subscribe and check out the new episodes coming up.
I just put the spotlight on Gail. Your book.
Yes. So my book is Beautiful Lady. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get it at my author website, which is gmaroney.com. And then I have a couple of podcasts that I'm participating in over the next week or so. I don't have the air dates for them yet, but I'll put that on my website. So I'd love to have you join. Thanks for listening.
All right, I'm now going to turn things over to Mr. Tim Barnaby, and he will take us through the wrap-up.
Thanks, Oscar. And thank you to all of our speakers today. What a wonderful set of stories that we got to listen to. And I really captured it as the theme this year, or this month rather, being choices, because that's what the underlying theme was in all of your discussions and your speeches today. Geri gave us the choice of no anger. And even though Stevie, who's our first mall cop to join us, which is fantastic, we never had one before, he told us to choose to face danger. Sometimes we do have to face it and be supportive to our fellow citizens. And I loved Crystal's message about choosing to be courageous and taking on the challenges that she has taken on. And then finally, Gail, who really told us to choose to pursue our dream, because that's exactly what she did. She was challenged with it, and look at how much she's accomplished by doing so. And all of you have done such a wonderful job with your messages, sharing your stories, bringing to life something for all of us to aspire to. So thank you so much for being a part of the TOM Storyteller Lab community. We so appreciate you. And we appreciate all of our attendees today. We hope that this is inspiring to you. If you are interested in being a speaker on our stage, our virtual stage here, we'd love to hear from you. Go to tomstorytellerslab.com. You'll find all the information about how you can become a speaker. As well, our team, Masako, Oscar, and I, we love to talk about storytelling, and we do so on a regular basis. We share content around story on our YouTube page. So if you haven't already, go to YouTube, subscribe to the TOM Storytellers Lab YouTube site. We put out a new weekly video on Tuesdays, so we'd love to have you join us there. So thank you again, everybody, for coming out to this month's Storytellers Lab event. And Misako, I'm going to turn it to you to wrap us up for the day.
Thank you, Tim. I will need one more hand to do the sounds and chat and Zoom camera thing. My brain goes zzz. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. TOM Storytellers Lab presenting Storytelling Hour. I'm addicted to storytellers, and I know you can already see I'm just crazy about storytelling and the personal stories. Everyone has a beautiful stories, and deep down it shows your personality. That speaks to us, and that brings us the best of our personality. That's just really nice to connect to each other and bring the best portion out of us, each other. That's the magic of storytelling, I truly believe. And I am going to finish this recording at 2 p.m., 30 seconds to go. And after that, we will produce the YouTube channel to our recordings. Each storytellers, I will edit your portion of story so you can use for your promotion and so forth. And let me know if you prefer a certain way. I will try. I'm not a wizard. I will try. So we are always working conditions, so we are improving each other. And thank you so much. Now, let's give us a final big applause. Thank you. I am stop recording now.